Hello, I am Elan Kelman from University College London in the UK and the University of Agder in Norway. You are listening to the Coffee and Geography podcast, so grab yourself a brew and enjoy the listen.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Coffee and Geography podcast. And I don't know whether I have to be careful with my words with this particular episode, because it's unfair to say that this person joining me is my boss, because technically he is and technically he isn't. But I don't think of him as my boss, because I just think of him as a lovely, wonderful human being and a lovely colleague who I have the pleasure of working on the Climate Ambassador Scheme with, and that is Andrew Charlton-Perez, who's the national co-lead for the scheme. Thanks for joining me, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kit. What a great introduction. Yeah, no, it's really great to talk to you, and I've really enjoyed listening to and watching some of these in the past. So it's exciting to be here and on it myself.
I had to get you on. I'm like, I need to get somebody from the national team on, and then so I was like, right, I'm going to try you first, and lo and behold, like, because I could get Charlotte, but Charlotte's like, she's a natural at this kind of stuff. She's good with the public and the public facing stuff. I'm like, no, she's had so much limelight. I've been invited to the Green Gown, be a judge at the Green Gown Awards for next year, which I'm really excited about. Yeah. And I saw the picture of the old ones, and she looks glamorous in her dress and stuff like that. She's sorted. She doesn't need the extra exposure. She's already got it.
She doesn't.
Yeah. But no, it's fantastic. So it's an absolute delight to have you here. And so, folks, if you're not sure who Andrew is a weather and climate scientist, first and foremost, a university leader, and someone who is very passionate about climate action and education. And the other thing as well, Andrew, is that as well as being active in academia and research and like that, you are so involved in collaborative community efforts of all shapes and sizes, which I really do want to explore, because I think one of the things that I'm really enjoying about the Climate Ambassador Scheme is just that embodiment of collective action and collective I've never, this is the first time in my life, seriously, when I've had a job where I've not felt siloed. And I think that's thanks to your approach, your vision, and how you've brought everybody together. So yeah, tell us a little bit about, before we go on to bits and bobs, just kind of a general overview of kind of the work that you do in general at the University of Reading, and how you kind of brought all of these networks and collaborations into your work.
Yeah, thanks, Kit. So yeah, as Kit says, I have kind of a few different hats, I suppose. So I have the great privilege to be leading part of the university where I studied myself as a student. So when I came to university, I grew up in the east of England. I grew up in a little town called Wisbech, which is between Kings Lynn and Peterborough. And I just always wanted to do something that was related to physics, and I was obsessed with weather and climate. So I wanted to come and do something in meteorology, and Reading definitely kind of hit all the notes for me. So I came here as an undergraduate and stayed for a PhD. And then through various bits of academic career, I left and worked in the US for a couple of years in New York, and then came back to Reading, and have kind of gradually progressed, through the typical sort of academic route, to now be head of school. So I lead one of the biggest schools on campus. So it's the School of Mathematical, Physical, and Computational Sciences. And that contains, so in addition to meteorology, which is where I'm in my meteorology office today, so this is where I am today, it also has two other great departments. So computer science and maths and stats are in my school. So I suppose that's my day job mostly, is helping to lead quite a big part of the organization. So there are about sort of 300 or so people within my school. And we manage a combined budget of just over £30 million. So that's my day job. And then, but I obviously, have had this huge passion for climate education at all levels, for a long time, and have been involved with the Royal Met Soc and others. And then we can go on to talk about kind of, where we got to climate ambassadors. I suppose that's an interesting conversation to have. So that's part of my job. And then the other part of my job is to kind of continue with my own research and my own teaching. So I still try to do a bit of that because I really love teaching. We're in a really fortunate position in meteorology, which is my home department, that we have really small classes. So we would typically have classes of sort of 15 or 20 students, which is a fantastic number of students to teach. We have really amazing students who come from all around the world, who are really, they remind me a lot of myself. So they're really kind of, they come with kind of the technical skills and background to do this subject, but they also come with a huge amount of passion and just a huge amount of almost kind of nerdy interest in like what's happening with the weather in the bit of the atmosphere that they care about. So I carry on doing that. In fact, I taught my last lecture on Monday for this semester. And then on the research side, so I still try to retain my interest in research. And I've worked on quite a few topics, but the primary topic that I work on is the dynamics of the stratosphere. So using the stratosphere, which is the layer above the layer we live in, to help us make better predictions on timescales of sort of a month ahead to maybe 6 months ahead or so. And coming back to that community point, I mean, I think it's interesting that this is where we've kind of ended up, spending a lot of my time and really enjoying doing so on Climate Ambassadors. It actually has a lot of parallels with the scientific work I did, which was also about community building. So sort of, I suppose one of my focus areas, in addition to doing my own research, has always been to lead international collaborative scientific projects. So I've been involved in a few of those for the World Climate Research Programme, but I suppose the one I'm best known for in the field is leading a project called SNAP, which is the Stratospheric Network for the Assessment of Predictability. And that was a kind of, and still is a network of, sort of 60, 70 scientists or so around the world were interested in the same problems that I'm interested in. It's organized lots of experiments and meetings, and it's been really nice as I've moved on to do other things to see that network continue and flourish. And many of my good colleagues who are, I kind of seen them grow into the role to lead that network and, take it in different directions than the directions that I had thought it would go in. So that's really exciting too.
That's absolutely, yeah. And I'll tell you what, there's a few things I'm picking up on there from my own experience. So when I was an undergraduate at University of East Anglia, I loved meteorology, so I specialised in that. And a name you might be familiar with, I had Professor Steve Dorling as my lecturer, and he was just incredible. He was amazing. And then he took us to the Lake District, and we were a small cohort as well. We were small enough that we could go down to the pub with Chris Vinson and Steve Dorling and all those kind of folks. And I just fell in love with it. And I just to kind of like be able to understand but also when you're experiencing the weather, I think to be able to kind of like know what the mechanisms are to go about that, and kind of like you were talking about the stratosphere, and I got pretty interested in that because my dissertation was all about what drives the storms into the North Sea and down the North Sea, and storm surges hitting the Norfolk coast. And I was exceptionally lucky that my dissertation advisor was Professor Jean Polutikov, who at the time was a lead IPCC author, and I actually didn't know that she was a lead IPCC author at the time. And then you're right about the nerdiness. I don't know what it is about us folks who love the weather. We just love the nerd. Like I'm looking out my window, and I know the fact like my window faced east. So okay, fine. So most of the prevailing weather comes from behind me, which I can see. But I can see what's going that way, and we've got some lovely bunched up cumulus clouds at the moment, and they're increasing. There's a lot of bit of instability in the weather. I can see the top of the tree swaying a little bit more than the bottom of the tree. So there's a little bit of layering with the atmosphere going on. So you got a definite Ekman effect going on. And I'm like, I'm such a nerd. I love it. I love it. And It's
and
just
that seems
amazing.
so like it is here. So we always say it's quite funny if you're in meteorology that there are sort of two times when work stops. So one is when it snows, because snow is a bit rare in the UK, right? So basically the first flake of snow, you'll see like 100 meteorologists with their looking out of windows or their face pressed up to the window. And the other time is when you get those severe convective storms. So that happened on Tuesday, was the first kind of really kind of chunky convection that we'd had, chunky thunderstorms over the summer. And yeah, it was like people were just like looking out the windows. No one was doing any work. It was hilarious.
I know, and I don't know what it is as well. Or maybe it's partly ADHD, but maybe it's partly the fact I've got a big tree in our garden and I can see. But I'll be looking at the screen right here, and to juxtapose, folks, the window is only like 45 degrees clockwise for me, right, looking east. And so if I'm doing something on here and suddenly I see that tree start really moving, like quite suddenly, I'm like, where's the we got a front time to come past? Where's the downdraft? I'm like, and then I rush into the other side of the house to see. I'm like, and then if it's nice and dark that side of the house, but still bright on this side of the house, I'm like, yeah, here it comes. But yeah, so I'm very, very geeky. But in terms of the collaboration kind of thing, it really has been a fantastic connection into other things. So, for example, I met a name that you'll be familiar with, who's unfortunately for you folks, but she's doing really well up in Newcastle now, and that is Dr. Hannah Broomfield, for example. Good friend of mine. So she, we met through when I was doing work with Professor Alberto Trocoli on the connection between climate and energy. And so then we were talking to people in the energy sector about energy, climate services for the energy. And then through that work, I then started to combine my experience as a high school teacher with climate and all this. And then I started to teach things like, what do we mean by climate services? And I started to making that more accessible to schools, saying, well, a climate service is this, that, and the other. So, and if a young person was interested in health, I'd talk about climate services for health. If they were interested in sport, I'd actually say climate services for sport. And it was just, and then to make that connectivity, we can connect everything in geography, right? But meteorology, of course, it's the state of the atmosphere which envelops everything and connects with every other part of the Earth system. So we already got this unique kind of realm, haven't we, of the natural Earth systems, where it literally is part of everything. You can't get away from it. Whereas you might be able to argue like the deep, deep, deep ocean can be stratified from other things, but still connects with the atmosphere eventually at some point, so.
And isn't that just so exciting? That, I mean, I think it's funny, isn't it, that people, before I kind of was in this field and I kind of knew people, I think there's this kind of sense that there's a distance between research and talking to people, and it's complicated and it's hard to do that. But as you just said, I think there's a lot of willingness to do that. Actually, most of the scientists I know that they're desperate for people to know exactly what they're doing and explain what they're doing and talk to people about it. It's just finding that route to do so. And so many young people are also really interested to kind of find out what's going on in current research topics and how do they get involved in that. And it takes expert people who can span kind of both areas as you have to be able to just take those messages across. It's so important that it's kind of a big part of what we hope for, I think, with how climate education will change through our project and how it will change in the future. I think more of that connection is what will be great, will be really exciting.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's actually interesting that, because I was thinking back to the days when I was a teacher. So I did my environmental science degree, specialising in meteorology and climate, and then I went straight into teaching high school geography for 13 years, and I did my absolute very, very best to bring in the science into the classroom. So one of the couple of things I used to do, I would actually at that time, the 4th and 5th IPCC assessment reports, I would try my very, very best to use those and then translate them for the classroom. But it was I still feel very siloed, because I felt like I might have had connections here and there. Like I might still, there might be someone at UEA who I could still contact, like Tim Osborne, I've always been in contact with throughout teach. I'd email him and say, Tim, I'm just doing this with some year 10s. Can you double check I've got it? Stuff like that. But I still felt it was kind of like them and us. But what changed for me was when I finished teaching and I did a sabbatical out in the States, and that's why I've got my drinking mug. So, and then I had the pleasure and privilege working for NOAA in Boulder, Colorado for
Oh, yeah.
a few months, and I was there. And I was on a volunteer basis. I was there, an education affiliate. So basically, my job, basically for just 2 or 3 months, was to literally work with the scientists on the periphery, go and read weather balloons with them, go into their talks, their lectures, help them collect some of the data, go to them, and then they would say, right, Kit, do you think you've got in? And then I'd ask questions. Do you think you've got enough now to do X, Y? And then I helped deliver the public tours of the buildings. I made a few videos. I made a few lesson materials, resources. I did a video about their air course system, which is amazing, where they release on a weather balloon basically a copper tube, wound copper tube on the bottom of an air balloon. So as it descends through the atmosphere, the air evacuates as it goes up. And as it comes down, because of the pressure differential, it fills the air up in that copper tube. So you've got a core of air, right?
Yeah.
And it was just incredible. And then I thought, this is amazing. And then I started to find out other people doing the same work, like climate science communication. And I was like, this is brilliant. And then I didn't feel so isolated, so siloed anymore. And then ever since then, I've been doing that off and on. And that's why this job is absolutely perfect for me, really, because I'm able to bridge those two realms, like, naturally now, but in a way, and this is the most important, in a way that actually turns into meaningful action. So I'm not just communicating the science anymore. I am facilitating and empowering the folks who really are impacted by climate change, helping them to have the support to make real differences and make them feel like that we can do something about this. And I tell you what, this is a level of privilege and a level of intrinsic motivation that I don't feel I felt since I first, middle stages of teaching, really, where I was in that kind of like happy part of teaching before everything started to go very, very bureaucratic and all that. Say for another time. So regular listener of the podcast knows now that we're doing things all sorts of out of order at the moment. So if you're regular listeners, hang on, folks. We'll get to the regular stuff in a minute, but we're on a roll here, right? So I guess when it comes to the Climate Ambassador Scheme, then I've got a question here from the UK School Sustainability Network folks, and in particular, our wonderful friend and Northeast Climate Ambassador, Meryl Bachelder, who we'll be seeing in June. And so this is quite a nice question to take the conversation next step. So she says, as the co-designer of the Climate Ambassador Programme, how do you envisage your ambassadors driving meaningful change in schools and colleges?
I mean, that's a great question. And I think it kind of comes back to what you just said, Kit. I think, what's really amazing, I think, about the work that we've been involved in over the past few years is how much that drive for change is already there in schools and colleges, actually. And we see it at different levels, right? So sometimes that is an individual teacher or an individual member of staff, and they really have the passion for this and they want to take things forward. And other times it's a really kind of far-sighted leader or group of leaders that want to take this forward. And there can be, kind of different people interested in this topic, different people who want to get involved. I think it's the role of climate ambassadors, and we're so lucky. I should say, I'd make sure I remember to say this before we get too much down the rabbit hole of the scheme. Is, of course, this is fundamentally a volunteer program. So I think we recognise that none of this is possible without an amazing set of volunteers, and I'm so grateful I've been blown away actually by how willing people are to kind of give up their time, get trained, go and help either in a school that they're connected to, or even a setting that they're not connected to, a college that they haven't been to before. And the fact that we're so excited to have got to 1,000 ambassadors, way ahead of when we thought we would. And that's because people are just so keen to do this. And I think saying that it's really important this is a volunteer program, it's then really critical for us to make sure that precious time, that precious volunteering time that people give us for free, it's amazing that they give us it for free, is used in absolutely the most effective and best way possible. So it's about us finding ways that, you know, that kind of drive, that kind of change that the school or the college wants to make, or doesn't know how to make, but they know where they want to get to, that our volunteers can come in and help at exactly the right point in that journey. And I think that's something that we've had to learn how to do a lot along the way. And we've benefited by Kit and all of Kit's colleagues who helped to run our hubs, and kind of thinking through that and thinking, how best do we get the right person in the right space to do this? But I would say it's not so much the drive. I think they can inspire the change. I think they can help the change. I think they can facilitate the change. But I think it's much, much more important that they that change, as you said, Kit, comes kind of from within the amazing networks and amazing schools that we already have. So it's for them to sort of drive the change. It might be one of the governors, chair of governors, who drives that change, and it's for us to really help that happen, and to just, you know, everyone likes to have someone to talk to, right? Everyone likes advice. Everyone, you know, when they've got something that they really want to do, they're not sure about, you know, you might call your mum, or you might call, you know, you might call whoever and it's a bit like that in a way. It's a bit like a friendly face who can come in, give you something that they could give you some help, give you their expertise, really help you to take those steps to facilitate that change.
Yeah, and one thing we've started to do very, very recently to exemplify exactly the kind of things you've said is we started to now draw up case studies and put them on the Climate Ambassadors website. So, I mean, you know a lot about Drake Primary School here in the east of England. You know, we've talked to them. You know, they're absolutely lovely, gorgeous folks. And folks, right, so I know that a lot of you are listening are educators, and you may be listening to this on the way to or from school or whatever, right? So just very, very quickly, bearing in mind what Andrew has just said, right, the fact that there is a lot of intrinsic motivation to do this. And look, I know as an ex-teacher, Andrew knows as someone who works in the education sector in academia, is that there are so many pressures, there are so many time pressures, right? We know that there is, and the day-to-day priorities override kind of the things that you want to do, that you are intrinsically motivated to do. And one of the things that did take me out of teaching was that the thing that I was getting run down by all the extrinsic motivational things, and I wasn't having enough intrinsic motivation to do my job. So, but Drake Primary is a prime example, because they came to our September launch events last year in September 2024, having no clue. In fact, the first time they really heard about the DfE's climate change and sustainability education strategy was when we started to contact schools about the event and saying, this is what the DfE are asking you to do, folks. And they turned up and they were like, we haven't got a clue. And they're not only, you know, doing amazing things, not even a year later, right? But Sarah, Danielle, and all the team there, you know, Sarah and Danielle have become climate ambassadors themselves. They've actually trained to be climate ambassadors themselves, because they're now offering their support. And yes, they've still got their teaching work to do. But what I will say, Andrew, and what we've seen and what we all know is that the leadership team at that school and in their federation are fully behind this and see the wood for the trees, and don't see it as a detriment or a distraction to what they must do as a school statutory wise. In fact, they see this as a key part of what they need to achieve and what they need to do in statutory fashion. So folks, I would strongly recommend that you get on to this and you have a look at our case studies. So yeah, so what, from your point of view then, Andrew, like, how have you seen all this manifest in kind of like through the case studies and your experience and your conversations?
Yeah, so I mean, I think picking up on what you said, Kit, I mean, I think that's really interesting, that part of the story, that, you know, the great colleagues in Drake, and I think that message is repeated actually across many of the settings that we work with. They're exactly the right people to make this change, because they know in their own setting and in their own community what works, right? So whoever could come into their community, they know their school better than anybody else. They're kind of in it every day. They know how their young people think. They know how their colleagues think. They know how their community thinks. And almost the worst thing in the world would be for us to kind of come in and impose something on a particular school or a particular college, particular nursery that just didn't fit for them. It would be just another, coming back to that, thing that demotivates people, is being asked to do things that they don't really have passion for. They don't really know why they're doing it. They can't grasp what it means for them. So I think we worked really hard to make sure that the Climate Ambassador scheme is absolutely the antithesis of that. It's really thinking about giving the framework and giving the help. It's not cutting people completely adrift, but it's just that's that supporting. Just as all the teachers who are listening know this, right? I'm teaching grandma to suck eggs very much. They know that all the young people that they're teaching, they have to let those young people move at their own pace. They have to scaffold them. They have to find the way that matches and helps them learn. And that's the model here, really. I've been, as you said, I've been in education my whole life. My mum was a teacher, my sister was a teacher. That is what I believe in, and so I think that's what our scheme is about. It's a matchmaking service, really. It's about getting those amazing ambassadors, and you've got some on the screen there who just have incredible sets of skills and incredible sets of enthusiasm. They want to give that to help meaningful action. There's lots of people over here who are in schools who want that, to deliver that meaningful action, and we're just about matching them up. That's really what we're doing, is finding them a simple, easy way to do what they want to do anyway.
Yeah, and you can't, if you still want to know about these ambassadors, this is why I was extremely happy, and I offered to Andrew and the team, like, I'd love to give like a whole season of my podcast to just interviewing climate ambassadors. So we can see there on folks on the screen, Stephanie Gilliver, is one of the climate ambassadors here in the East who came on the podcast. Go and listen to, but it's not just talking about what she can do for schools or anything like that. It's getting to know what drives them and why they're intrinsically motivated and why they want to support the work that you do and drive climate action through what you need to do as a school. And so I think Andrew, you're absolutely spot right with that message. And I think one of the problems that I've had, and I know the other regional hub managers had, is that, we've had superb buy-in from schools, right? We could talk KPIs and stuff like that, but this is not, we don't do it for the KPIs, but we're ahead of our KPIs, but we mostly because, not that we don't care about our KPIs, but we're ahead of them because of, as I say, of the intrinsic motivation of why we're doing it, not because we're trying to make numbers. And it's so, it's both frustrating, but also so heartening to know that we could be meeting and helping so many more schools, because there's still a lot of skepticism and a lot of apathy out there, not because of there's no one real fault, no one's at fault for that or any reason for that, but for the reasons that you said, because there's just so many pressures. And then when we say things, we can do this, they're like, oh, but I ain't got time for that, or they don't understand what actually we're offering, and we're not coming in to impose ourselves, we're coming in to elevate you and connect you and stuff like that. So I think that was a really important point that you made there.
Yeah, and it's there's just, in a sense, the sky's the limit here, right? This is a I've been involved in lots of different things in my career. As I sort of gave you some of the numbers about how big the organisation I run in my day job is. And it's a wonderful place to work. I'm so lucky to work here and work with so many amazing colleagues. But the sense of momentum that climate ambassadors is what gets me out of bed in the morning, for sure, because I've never worked on anything where there's a sense of momentum from all sides, from the amazing team that we have working on the project, from the amazing volunteers that we have, from the schools and the teachers and the young people. It just feels like we and all of our colleagues in the other projects are kind of hitting the sweet spot. This is something that it really feels like something that lots of people want to do. They want to get behind the momentum, and we've kind of seen that growth really quickly. but because, and it's not, the numbers are amazing, and I'm constantly blown away by the numbers. But you're absolutely right, Kit. It's not about the numbers really. It's about seeing those examples, and when you hear about those examples and you hear about the amazing events and amazing things, Kit, before we came on, Kit and I were talking about an event that Kit and our other colleague Tilly went to yesterday, and just seeing the young people engaged in some of this work is, you would have to have a heart of stone not to be impressed by the amazing engagement and knowledge that they have. And what a privilege, what an amazing job to be doing, that you're in some way part of that. It's just utterly incredible. And for the volunteer ambassadors as well, I mean, we'd love as many as we can get, and there's just such a positive feeling when you are an ambassador. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, I'm a bit curious, I might be interested in doing that, please just give it a go. You won't regret it. You'll get so much from just that day or a couple of days that you can give to us from your volunteering time. It's such a positive experience.
That's a really great way of, in fact, and that's the message that I constantly give out as well when I speak to people, is that you've really got nothing to lose. I mean, I think us regional hub managers now managed to refine the message to make it, because you can cut. I don't think we ever wanted to try come around sounding corporate, but when schools have heard it all before, they get emails all the time, they get mail shots all the time, they get letters come through all the time. So they've heard all that kind of stuff before. So it's taken us a while to kind of like get a message that breaks through to say, oh no, you are something different. And I think the same goes with trying to get people on board as ambassadors. Like, that's the phrase that I like to use now, which seems to help a lot, is that we want to enhance the work that you're doing, and we want to become an extra tool in your existing toolbox, and we want to connect you with other people doing the same work you are doing. So that's the way that I've been phrasing it here in the East, and lo and behold, like the event that you were talking about at Peterborough. What was so lovely about it is that, yes, there was like people I hadn't met before and Tilly hadn't met before, and that was fantastic. And so we could have the new conversations with them. But it was also, oh, hello, oh, you're here as well, are you? You're here as well, sorry, you are. But there's what I was like. I'm looking around, I'm thinking, actually, just organically, 6 of my climate ambassadors are here as well.
Yeah, amazing.
It's great. And like Caroline Donnelly from Anglian Water, for example, goes, we just keep meeting like this. I wonder if it's got something. What is it that connects us? It's like, but what are they doing? They are doing their job as the education team at Anglian Water, trying to promote sustainable use of water and sustainable drainage systems. They're not doing anything above, nothing beyond or extra their work.
Yeah.
But they are using what they're doing, and through their climate ambassador training, they are able to connect with all these other collaborative efforts. And so, folks, Andrew is totally right. If you're not sure, give it a go. If you do the free 2-hour training and you're like, we'll guarantee you that you'll probably likely turn around and say, all right, I'll give it a go. I haven't come across a person who's done that 2-hour training and gone, no, this is not for me. Not yet. I might get one or two, but not yet.
I think that's right. And I think, like all of us, right, doing anything that's the unknown that you haven't done before, unless you're sort of a bit of an oddball and really, so confident that it's untrue, you're going to have nerves about going and doing it. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be the unknown.
Yeah.
But that's exactly why we have Kit and other people to help you do that. Just to, just talk you through that. Just say to you, go and do that. And maybe this will work, and that's the right thing. And as I say, I really don't think you'll regret it. I think you get that kind of glow of positivity very quickly from doing it, because there's just such a desire to do this work amongst all the amazing teachers who are listening to this, all the amazing heads and senior leaders who are listening to this. We want to help you. We know you need help, and we want to help you.
100%. I just want to show, just to again exemplify that, if I just people who are listening, let me describe what I'm doing. I'm going into my phone, Andrew, and everybody who can see, and I'll describe for you watching. Like, just a visual representation of what exactly is going. Well, first of all, I'll put a link in the description. I'll put a little 1-minute video online of the event that Tilly and I went to, and just from that 1-minute video, you'll get a sense of what it was like, and it was so positive. It was so joyful. So here's another one which I'll show you folks. So here we go. So this is sharing my screen now, coming up on the screen. This is Norwich Science Festival, right? And this embodies the kind of thing. This was just before we opened for the day on the last day on the Monday. And every single one of those people, so we've got describing it for the podcast for audio only folks, we've got a set of tables, and there's lots of lovely things on each of the tables. One table there, we had a big giant cardboard insect, invertebrate, that you could run a pipe along its legs to make it talk about biodiversity. So we had one for each of the pillars of the climate action plan: adaptation, resilience, biodiversity, climate education, green careers, and decarbonisation. And every single one of these people that you can see on this picture are either a trained climate ambassador or a trained UEA student ambassador, or a member of our sister projects, which we haven't even mentioned yet. You know, the sister projects that we work with: National Education, Nature Park, Let's Go Zero, in particular. And this, you know, this one picture embodies kind of like the community collaborative spirit of the scheme, really. And between the 3 days, we had, I think, I can't remember off the top of my head now, but somewhere around 250, 260 mini climate action plans were written by young people, which we ended up sending to schools, you know, and the kids, intrinsically motivated, they came and they learned and they thought about what could be possible, and we sent these things off to their schools. So that's, you know, that's just one example. And the other one, you'll love this, Andrew. So if I switch to this one now, the other thing that that we really do, I think one of the best parts of this job is who you've connected together, right? So here's a picture. This is myself and most of the other regional hub manager team when we had our little residential over in Kiel. So this is us at the we're behind like one of the big massive turbines in their eco park where they've got solar panels, stuff like that. And yeah, it's the only person missing off that particular photo was Elle, because Elle was off graduating, so to become Dr. Elle. But we are really like family, you know. All the regional hub managers, we get on really well, and me in particular, I get on exceptionally well with the other sister project leads here in the east of England. So Lewis, Jenna, Nigel, Luciana, and Jeremy. And this scheme has enabled that, Andrew. I've worked with brilliant colleagues. I've worked with fantastic teachers, people who lift you up when you're down and things like that. You say you wake something that gets you up in the morning and you can wake up to is the Climate Ambassador Scheme. When I wake up in the morning, I think I've got this wonderful job. I don't just think I'm going to work. I think, oh, this is great. I get to work with Emma again. I get to work with Nikki again. I get to work with Lachlan, Cormac, Ruth, Tilly, Gemma, Elle. I know Elle's moving on now, bless her. But I really do feel that. And every time we see each other online, or every time we, like me and Tilly, the first thing we do is run each other, give each other a big hug. And, you know, that's how it should be.
Yeah,
that's how it should be.
I mean, that's just so lovely to hear. And I think when we were thinking about what this would be like, and obviously, you know, we were working really hard on kind of developing a plan for how we might deliver this, and we were really hoping that team ethos would kind of come through, even though we knew that we would have people, you know, in lots of different places in the country. And I think what you have is almost even more than we hoped for. I think we in our mind, when Charlotte and I were planning this, we were kind of thinking, oh, you know, we'll hope that they'll work together and they'll be able to help each other. But it's clear that it's much more than that. And I think what's really interesting is that happens. It happens a lot at the national level as well. So we really do love working with Jess and Sam at the Nature Park, and with Lizzie at Sustainability Support for Education, and Alex at Let's Go Zero. And I mean, that's been an amazing thing from the start. So to delve a bit back into the sort of prehistory in a way of the Climate Masters program. So this came from work that we did as part of the National Climate Education Action Plan group, and it was one of the ideas that came out of that. And even in the early stages of planning, in the early stages of developing that, I worked really closely with Charlotte and really closely with Alex Green at Let's Go Zero, and the two more kind of open, collaborative people you couldn't wish to meet in your life. They're amazing people, and they will work so hard to deliver the thing that you're trying to get to, but not in any way for their ego, in any way to promote themselves. And this is a real flex, but we got invited to the garden party at Buckingham Palace, so we were there last week actually, and Alex was there as well, and it was so lovely to spend the time with Alex. Alex's mum was there, and it just felt like we were old friends. And I think probably we only have ever met each other in person like a few times actually, when I really think about it, and we've had lots of meetings. I feel like I know Alex really well because we had lots of meetings like this online. In person, we perhaps only met 10 times. I don't know, but it's really felt like we've been on a journey together to do this, and co-leading this program with Charlotte is just a dream. I mean, Charlotte, so I think you can hopefully see that we don't think exactly the same, but I think we play off each other really well, and we will fill in the gaps when the other one can't do it or doesn't know what to do. And obviously, if you're co-leading something, you need that to work, right? And it's a different way of. I'm sort of used to in my day job being I'm ultimately in charge, so I lead on my own. I don't, I have lots of great colleagues who I work with and heads of department and others, but ultimately the decision comes down to me.
Yeah, it's
really great to have it not always come down to me actually in this program, and that Charlotte and I have to negotiate, and we disagree, and we get to the right answer, and that's a wonderful thing, and I really enjoy it. It's one of the other parts that I really enjoy, as well as seeing it all happen and seeing you be happy and enjoy your work. It's Charlotte and I see each other a lot every week, but I always look forward to it. I always look forward to the conversation, because I know we're going to do something good.
And I've only ever had that feeling of everyone being on an equal footing, and and I'm very happy to say on record and publicly that I personally anyway, I don't feel there's like a forced hierarchy or any kind of I mean, that we have a system in place because it's necessary for projects to work, of course, but pecking order, that's probably the best. Thinking of the little chicks that I saw yesterday in Peterborough, there's no pecking order, and both what I've really appreciated, and I think it's worth listeners hearing this, because sometimes it's worth hearing about some of the things behind the scenes that can be shared, is that there's been plenty of occasions when we've had open and honest and fair debates which have led to changes in decisions or reinforcement of decisions and stuff like that, but it's never been sour. It's always been open, and it's always felt very collaborative, and I think, and I just feel so privileged, and I understand that that's not always the case in everybody's work life or everybody's situation or every project. And I've been part of projects where it was very hierarchical and was very, this is the way they want it done. Do as you're told, and vice versa. And I think you can't approach climate action in that way. You can't do it, because you could argue one of the reasons why we're in this mess with climate change and the environmental degradation, stuff like that, is because of inequality, disparity, power hierarchies, and things like that. So you have to have this approach, I think, that, and we're still changing, we're still learning, we're still not getting it perfectly right. And that's what I love about it, because in all fairness, Andrew, it would get boring, wouldn't it, otherwise?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm really pleased to hear that. And I think I've enjoyed that too, that we really try hard to listen to each other, and we learn a lot from, Kit, you're sort of doing, Kit, you brought so much to the project already. I mean, you brought your networks to the project, and I think we've benefited so much from that. And if we were going to say, no, here's the cookie cutter approach that you have to adopt, we would have lost so much, because we wouldn't, like this podcast that we're on now, this was something that you were doing anyway. It's been a fantastic way for us to communicate with people and talk about what we're doing. And we're so grateful that you're prepared to do it. And that all of our hub managers have other things that they bring and different things that they bring to the party, and that ultimately what makes us strong. It's a good model to do that in the project, because we know that, as you say, that's what each school and each college has to do. They have to bring that team together, and because this stuff is hard, right? It does need change, and there's not always enough money to do it. There's some money, but there's not always enough, and it requires bringing a lot of people along with you. And the only way you can do that is to be honest and open, and make some mistakes and try things. And I mean, I'm just such a great believer in that as an approach to life, is that you have to think things through and have a good plan to do it. But you can kind of plan forever. You have to just ultimately take the plunge and give it a go, and then be prepared to say, actually, we got that wrong. And we've done that a lot in this project. I do it in my other part of my job. I certainly do it at home with my kids and my wife, and sometimes we get things wrong there and say, yeah, sorry, we got that wrong, we'll do it differently. And that's fine. You just a bit of humility about what you know and what you can do takes you a long way, doesn't it?
And there's no two ways about, folks, this is a hard job. This is a challenging job, and it can feel, and it can be overwhelming, but at the end of the day, I mean, I can't speak for the other regional hub managers or other client ambassadors, but for me, if I've again, I've said this more times in this one episode, and I have the entire podcast series, right? But because I'm so intrinsically motivated, and I'm so invested in it, and I feel like I'm being invested in, and I'm able to invest outwards. Like, even though sometimes any job can feel like hiding to nothing, I'm for it, and as you say, I get up every day. I mean, today is my non-working day, and yet I'm having this conversation. Why? Not because I have to, but because I want to and I enjoy it. So, that's where it is. I want to, while we've still got a little bit of time, I don't want to get away with, going into you a little bit more. So 2 questions very, very briefly is that you mentioned that you're from Wisbech, so kind of like closer to where I am now at the moment, not too far from Peterborough, but you're down in Reading. A question I like to ask folks, Andrew, is how is your identity of today been formulated by your geography? So, do you consider yourself now, you're Southeast West London, like through and through now, or are you always going to have that part of East Anglia part of you? So in about 5 or so minutes, what would describe the personal geography identity of Andrew today?
Yeah, so definitely the second. So when I was a kid, my grandparents lived on a farm, and it was just at the end of kind of being towards a working farm. You probably describe it more as a market garden.
Right.
And one of my earliest memories, so they would, my granddad worked, he was a printer, but they also farmed, the remaining land that they had. And one of my earliest memories, when I was probably about sort of 2 maybe, is that we would all go down and pick the strawberries. So one of the things they grew were strawberries. I can tell you that they grew Cambridge 422s. If anyone who has a particular strawberry knowledge, and that was just, we did it. Everybody did it. It was a collective. It kind of comes back to this idea of the collective. So my mum worked, my dad worked, and but when the strawberries were ready, we all went and picked them. And that's what we did, because somebody had to pick them, and they had to, they were ready that day. So we all went, and if you were a kid, you got sat at the end of the field, and you got given a punnet, and you were helping to pick. I think I've never eaten so many strawberries in my life. I can just remember that, like, kind of happy, sort of sunny feeling, because it's always sunny when you do it, of course. So it's like this beautiful weather, eating as many strawberries as you possibly could until you felt sick. And I think that is so formative to who I am. And that's definitely my mum, my grandparents both passed away, sadly, but my my mum still lives on that farm, and that farm has only ever been in my family, actually. So it was my grandmother's family. It was the first house on the lane. So it was the first family to farm that bit of land when it was drained, were our family. And it's a very I'm thinking about it a lot because my mum's and stepdad are preparing to move, so they'll sell up, and it will be really that kind of identity of being on a farm in a particular location with kind of views that I've known my whole life, and not having that is quite an emotional thing, actually, and it definitely formed who I am. It definitely meant that I was interested in the environment, and I was interested in the weather and seeing the weather change and seeing how it affected what we did and how we behaved. It's totally part of who I am. And it will always be, even though I'm definitely now from the southeast and I've spent most of my life in Reading, I still think of it as home, which is funny, right?
Oh. And I'm just picturing now, like as a kid, like out in that strawberry field, and of course in that part of the world and that part of our country, they say, I mean, I've got connections, as you know, to Bozeman, Montana, and they call it Big Sky out there. But you must have had some vistas out that way, surely.
Oh yeah, I mean, the farm is there's no one for hundreds of meters in either direction. It literally is just fields as flat as you can possibly imagine, and the sky is just it's just sky, as you say. It is big sky country, so you can't help but notice it. You're looking at it all the time. You can see it all moving around you. You can think about, is it going to hit you? Yeah, it's totally part of your identity.
Oh. I mean, I do love the mountains, but whenever I go through the fens or that part of East Anglia on my way out west or something like that, I just cannot be, and I can do this deliberately now. I cannot just be bowled over by what I see, because one last thing to talk about before we finish off the podcast, and you mentioned your grandfather, and I don't know if it's the same grandfather, but spilling the beans here or showing us the bowls. You were once in a national bowls semi-final, I believe.
I was. So I'll show you my picture, which I keep here by my desk. So I don't know how well.
Okay, let me close this down so we can see that a bit clearer.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are. So yeah, there's you. Is that your mum and your granddad?
Yeah. So that's the three of us. But for real bowls aficionados, there are two different types of bowls. So there's Federation bowls, which is played mainly in the kind of north and northeast, and Association bowls, which is played down here. And all of my family, my mum and dad, who are now divorced, met playing bowls, and essentially,
okay,
bowls was part of my life. So that photo is my mum, my granddad, and me playing before we played in a national semi-final. So that's as far as we got. We lost the semi-final by a couple of shots, I think. And it was just, it was my grandfather, and they're all very successful. So my mum was national champion, my granddad was national champion, my dad was national champion, my uncle national champion. But that is the proudest moment of my grandfather's life. Being there all together and playing all together was just an amazing thing. So I did play when I was here for some time, but I haven't since the kids and lots of things. I haven't played for a while, but watch this space. I'm keen to play again at some point. So
well, yeah, for a fact a lot of our colleagues are going to be listening to this, and we're going to hold you to account now. Perhaps the next time we have a consortium get together, we should have like a little consortium bowls championship. What do you reckon?
I'm up for it.
Yeah, perhaps not the football, as we were talking beforehand. I mean, I'm a Spurs supporter and we've just won the Europa Cup, but you as a Peterborough fan, you've won more as a Peterborough fan than I have as a Spurs supporter in my life. But anyway, enough about that. So to finish off finally, Andrew, we're going to do one more thing, and that is We Are All Geographers, where we're linking previous guests to future guests. And the last person who had a go at this was our now ex-colleague, L. Young. So Dr. L. So I interviewed Dr. L for the last Coffee and Geography podcast, and she had to go have a go at this. Now, when she finished her 30-second riff on the word she was given, she had to come up with a word for the next guest. She didn't know the next guest was you. So she came up with the word, believe it or not, we've spoken about it. She's come up with the word empowerment. So your job for 30 seconds non-stop, Andrew, is to talk about the word empowerment. It could be related to our discussion. It could be related to your work, however you want to take it. So when you're ready, as soon as you start, I'll start the timer, 30 seconds on the word empowerment.
Well, that's so funny, isn't it? Because I think we've been talking about that essentially for the whole podcast. We've been talking about how it empowers us, this project, how it empowers all our amazing volunteers, how it empowers schools and young people, and that's essentially what we've been doing, and it's what I do in my day job too. It's about empowering my colleagues to do brilliant research. It's about empowering our students to succeed, our research students, everybody to just be their best.
Perfect. What a perfect word. And as I say, no, I didn't tell. Well, after we finished recording, and then she did it, I said, the next person's Andrew. She went, oh, perfect. Yeah, well, there we go. So, Andrew, for whoever I have on next, I think we're back to our lovely, wonderful climate ambassadors from next recording. So, which word would you like for them to have a little riff at for 30 seconds? Yeah, if you want to look around the shelves and find some inspiration, people do it all the time.
That's the hardest question you've asked me, Kit. That's the most difficult thing. I think as a meteorologist, I think I couldn't go better than the word forecast. So how about the word forecast? Great.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I'm all for that. So, folks, we will next Coffee and Journey podcast. Our next guest will go for the word forecast. So, as always, folks, I'll put all the links and the descriptions down in the description, and I will make sure that you can hook up with Andrew via LinkedIn, probably the best way there, and your profile on University of Reading and stuff like that. Yeah, this has been such a lovely chat, and yeah, it's just thank you again for co-leading this project, and for coming on and giving us your insight, and also to learn a little bit more about you as well. So that was quite nice. That made my morning for sure. Or made my afternoon.
Thanks so much, Kit. It's been really, really lovely to talk to you, and yeah, great fun.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Coffee and Geography, folks. If you're itching to know more about the Climate Ambassadors' awesome work, visit www.climateambassadors.org. Don't forget to follow us on Blue Sky at geogramblings.com and use the CoffeeJogPod hashtag to stay in the loop. Submit your questions for our guests on LinkedIn or Blue Sky with hashtag JogQ over a brew. Keep exploring this amazing world, tackling climate action and flexing your geography muscles. Stay curious, keep jogging, and keep making waves.